I guess I'll back up and say that we have taken a little bit of a different pathway than home performance, which has gone the prescriptive project pathway where the projects are submitted through Efficiency Vermont's online rebate center. For building performance, the reason we didn't do that is because the program is for commercial, small commercial and small multifamily projects, and just the given the range of kind of building types and the variability of savings that we see in those building types, the prescriptive pathway that home performance took wasn't really going to be a good fit for building performance. So because of that, we needed to come up with a way to be able to have you, the contractors, submit the projects in the absence of the Hero tool. So that's what we're talking about today is the QLoss tool, which will facilitate that for building performance projects. So that's kind of the project submission piece. And as far as incentives go, starting on January 1, the incentives for building performance will be 50% of project costs, up to $3,000. So the incentive structure for building performance is changing. That is, going to be more aligned with home performance. So yeah, those are I think the two kind of main high level changes that we're looking at for building performance. So today Matt is going to walk you through the QLoss tool and how to submit projects so that you can continue to report projects to Efficiency Vermont, and you will continue to receive a $200 trade outlay incentive for submitting projects using QLoss.
Great, thank you, Tori. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. I did put a link to the clean copy of QLoss in there. So for those of you who can get the chat, you can open it, download it, and save it to your computer. And I also will just note I am recording this, so it should be available for anybody in building performance world to review later on. So the dog is giving the training this morning. Hope you can all understand dog language.
Matt, I'm not sure if the QLoss file came through in the chat. I don't know if anyone else can see it in the chat, but
Okay.
Yeah, I was looking for that.
Do you mind just trying again? Oh,
you don't see. Oh, I didn't click the OK button.
There
all
you go.
There we go.
Perfect.
Thank you. All right. So the first. So if all of you could be on mute and until you're wanting to ask a question, that'd be much appreciated. And feel free to jump in with questions as we go. And we'll try to answer them right off. So I think the first thing to note, I think, is just save yourself a clean copy. And as soon as you're starting on a project, do the save as and save it as a named copy for your project. And that way you will avoid kind of corrupting or having to undo stuff. Now, some things you could do, you could enter like your EEN company, auditor name, test, maybe not test date, but some things that you would have to repeat enter. You could go ahead and enter those before you save a clean copy. But just diving into this, orientation wise, all the way to the left side in this column A, you see this upload to Efficiency Vermont button. I'm not going to demonstrate it because it works differently on my computer because it comes to me. I don't know exactly why, but when you click this button, you'll have first of all, you should save your final version first to a location that you can go retrieve from on your computer. So then you click this upload button, and then all you have to do is navigate to that location where you have it saved. And I would say that we are asking for invoices to go along with this QLoss. So if you put your invoice in the same location you save the QLoss, when you click this upload button, you should be able to navigate to that same location and attach both of them. And and when you submit that, then an email will be sent to me automatically, and I'll push it through to the right people on this end to get it processed for incentives. One of the first things that maybe Tori could show at the end of the presentation, if we have time, is there's going to be an enrollment form that we have to send to customers as well, just like we do for home performance. The process for that looks a little different than home performance, but what we'll do is we'll send, using DocuSign, we'll send that enrollment form to the customer and to the contractor. There's a place for both to sign. So I think the process is we'll send it to the contractor, you'll sign it off, and then it'll automatically go to the customer for them to sign off, and then it'll automatically come back to us for us to work it from there. That enrollment form is not something that any of you have to initiate on your end. That's something that we'll initiate, and all you have to do is when you see that email from DocuSign, you do need to sign it. All right, so jumping into QLoss, we have this top section is all about the project location, the customer's information, the name of the business, the name of the address of the business, and the mailing address of the owner. Some email information, phone information, and then this building use, like is it a 3 or a 5 unit building, or is it a general store with an apartment on top? What's the use type, so that we can kind of orient ourselves to what we're looking at. And heating degree day town, and some of this stuff is going to look very familiar to Hero. And just so you know, Hero was built with the same algorithms, the same methodology that QLoss uses. So QLoss has a lot of the same functionality. The difference is you get to, it's not a black box. You can see all the algorithms in there, and you do have a few extra places to adjust things in order to help dial in the results a little bit better. So moving down, we get into the building data, typical stuff. How many occupants, really, what's the square foot volume, how many floors. We have the heating degree, weather information. So based on the town you select up here, it'll pull in that heating degree day information. And this is the same as Hero. You do the closest town to the town you're in. There are a few towns that are not on this list. So choose the closest similar weather town to the one you're working in if you don't see yours on the list. The correction factor is the same as Hero's shell savings adjustment factor. That defaults to 60%. But here's where we might make some adjustments for, something like a church that's only heated to 50 degrees most of the time. We might start adjusting that down to 50 or 40% to try to get those savings to be more aligned to the actual results they're going to see. The design temperatures, this is something you may or may not use, but there is some design, room by room design load functionality in this QLoss. It's not manual J, but it does give you some results based on delta T and heating and U values that you're putting in. So it could be useful for some of you. Fuel price data, straightforward. And then usage data. So we still do want, like Hero, want to know how much fuel is being used in the building. That's a really important savings check for us to do. Are you estimating 100% of the usage is being saved? That would mean we'd want to review that a little closer. So enter your gallons or your kilowatt hours if it's electric heat in this category, or your cords of wood. The thing to note on here is that if you do have pellets, you see there's not a place for a separate line for pellets. So the notes here say change this from 20 to 16.4 if you're working in pellets. So you can edit that field right there to 16.4 if it's pellets, and then put in tons right here. There's sort of the only little workaround for usage. It'll convert all those gallons and kilowatt hours and cords to MMBTU over here, and then give you a total. That's the red ink. And then that red ink gets brought over, and that's the number we see over here. So if we had, 1,200 gallons of oil, you see that 165.8 that comes in over here, and that's your truth. That's the amount of energy this building uses. And if you were to do a full model, do every wall, every window, every ceiling, every floor of this building, you should be able to line it up that 166 MMBTUs is being modeled, and that's 166 being used. We have a match. You can have some level of accuracy there that you can be comfortable with. So that's the building in general. I'll just pause for a second there if anyone wants to jump in and ask questions about that.
Quick question. I'm completely new to Hero, QLoss, etc., but I'm trying to get involved for cover home repair. And when we enter the fuel usage, is that annual fuel usage?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. And if you can get a 3-year average, that's ideal. But if you can only get 1 year, then that's what you got.
Yep, getting the info from our folks is going to be challenging.
Yeah, that is one of the more challenging things in the energy audit in general, I think, tracking down that info. For electric usage, we should be able to give you that. If there's electric heat, you can call us, call the EC you're working with, and we can dig into the electric bills and give you an estimated heating usage for electricity.
Can I assume that like electric usage bills often show totals, averages over annual use? Would there other types of fuel bills show records on any given bill? Is that common?
Typically, if you can go to the fuel dealer, if you get permission from the owner to go directly to the fuel dealer, then what they can do is they can usually, not all of them, but a lot of them can print out the usage history into either an Excel or a PDF and give that to you. And a lot of times what they do is they total it annually. They delivered X amount in 2019, X amount in 2020. And that makes it pretty easy for you to translate to what you need here. And really, I've found that's the best way to get the data. But the fuel dealers are going to ask for the owner's permission to give you that data. So be prepared for that.
Thank you.
Hello, Matt.
Hello.
This is Bill. My question is this for space heating only, or is there other approaches for analyzing domestic hot water, for an example, or air conditioning, for an example?
Yeah, good question. So I'll take the air conditioning one first. There's a crude way of estimating air conditioning energy savings using this same input strategy for heating. So if you just scroll over to the right here, you see cooling savings. And what this is doing is taking the BTU savings load that we calculate from the UA, the inputs over here in yellow, and it's using the SEER level of the AC unit, and there's also a place to tell you how much is cooled area. So there's a default cooling degree days up here. You can do your due diligence and find a different number for that as you wish. And then there's a correction factor. If there's a bunch of internal gains, you might adjust that higher. This is all very rough, but it's sort of what we could do within this framework to give at least some number. The cooled square footage area is you can either enter the percent directly in this little box that's divided by right now, or you could enter the actual square footage. So if we had, 5,000 square foot building, and you only are cooling 1,000 square foot apartment above it, it would look like that. And then 20% would be the amount that's associated with cooling, 20% of all this MMBTU. So that's cooling. For domestic hot water, it's not something that we need for a building performance project. So you can just skip domestic hot water altogether if you'd like. But if you want to look at some savings scenarios, you can enter your domestic hot water here, and you say, let's say it's oil is 100% of your domestic hot water, and it's 70% efficient, and you're switching to an electric. Maybe it's a heat pump, so you're going to raise that up. Heat pump efficiency. Oops, wrong button. Over here, you'll see the domestic hot water savings. Now that's 0 right now because there are some defaults built in based on number of occupants. So when you put in your occupants, it gives you a estimated water use. Now, if you know that number, you can hard write it right in if you do your own disag. But this is the default. So that gives you some savings estimates for domestic hot water. Again, not required for a building performance project, but a function you could use.
Thank you.
All right. Wondering if there's chat here that needs to be looked at. All right. So the building needs to be described in its square footages of surface. Now, the most accurate way to do this is to enter all the square footage of the building and true it up to that consumption value. But as you know from Hero, you can do a quick and dirty and just model the surface that you are adjusting. And so let's say you have a building that is, I don't know, 60 by 100, and you have that attic. And that attic, R value you've determined existing is 25, and you're going to bring it to 60 after you air seal it. That's how Hero works. It's just a line by line. It gives you a savings number for just what you are doing. I'm not sure why it's not giving us a savings number down here. Oh, lower door. And building height. Volume. So as you can see, we do need to have some amount of inputs here for the whole thing to calculate out. Otherwise, we get those divide by numbers. Now we have some savings that if that attic is real and that usage is real, we're saying you're just going to save 25% of the usage by doing that attic, and that's 41.5 MMBTU. So all of the results are sort of condensed down to this little section down here. And as you can see here, that's, you know, the attic, you're estimating in this model, the attic to be, you know, about 100 out of 166 of the million BTUs in that building. So that might not be accurate if you see that, like, oh, maybe I got that R value wrong, or maybe I got that square footage wrong, and go double check your numbers there. I'd also note there's a correction factor up here for the whole heating degree days that's applied across every line equally. There also is a correction factor for each line if you know a certain condition exists that is not directly to outside. We wouldn't typically do this for an attic, but if you had a buffer zone like a garage, you might adjust that down. The most common example is going to be the basement, where an unheated basement is 0.5 versus a heated basement would be the full 1. So you can use that to further adjust to reality of your situation. So let's further build this out. You know, I'm just making this up. So, you know, to give you a heads up, it's not going to be exactly trued up. This is just a made up building. So let's say we have a basement 2 that's, you know, above grade is 2 foot down, 2 foot depth, and below grade is 5 feet down from there, which makes it a total 7 foot high basement. Right? We have 2 foot above grade, 5 foot below grade, and let's say the perimeter is 320 for both of those. Our default R value for a basement comes in at 3, and we're going to bring that up to 21 with some great insulation strategy. And so then you see the results fill out to the right. So you can start seeing your subtotals for all the above grade stuff is up here. And then you have the below grade stuff is down here. There's a subtotal for that. And then you have your air leakage line, and that all gets totaled down again to this dark green spot. And then your savings percent as to your usage is updated down there. So you continue doing this for as many surfaces as you have to insulate, if you want to do quick and dirty, or to do the whole building to increase your accuracy, to true it up to that actual usage. I'm not going to go ahead and build out a full model, but I'm going to show you a couple things that you could use to be a little more accurate to the situation. So for example, this attic scenario, let's say you are going to actually change that attic from across the flat to a sloped and gable conditioned attic. In that scenario, to be able to see the savings difference between just doing along the flat, what you can do here is say, well, I'm making this surface right here, this flat attic, so that there is no heat loss across that surface, because I'm going to be insulating the roof line instead. So I'm going to jump this up to 1 million. Okay, so then you see here, the proposed scenario is 0 heat loss at that surface, but then you're going to add the surfaces of the slant and the gable walls, and you can rename this stuff. You can, let's say this is gable walls, and let's say this is oh, I don't know, making up numbers. Let's say that's 90 by, oops. 90 by 100, and in the new surfaces that you're going to be adding, you're actually going from 1 million, no heat loss, to whatever your proposed value is. Let's say it's 49, and then your gable walls, you know, let's say And you can hard write if you want to overwrite the formula. You can just say, okay, I know that that wall is I don't know, I'll pick a number, 500 square feet on both sides. That's 1,000 square feet. That is also going from 1 million, no heat loss, but these walls are only going to 24. Now we see over here a bunch of savings by removing the surface of the flat, but a bunch of added usage, negative savings for the surfaces of the slopes and the gables. The net of that is your savings. And you see when you add so much surface area like that, your net savings is actually pretty low. So, you know, it's also you have a lower R value on your gables and your slopes than you did on the flat. So this is both a little training on how to use QLoss to represent that, but also sort of a big little push to say, maybe think 2 or 3 times before you choose to go the slope gable route, if you can do the flat and still have success. Obviously, ducts in the attic and stuff complicate that, and QLoss is not designed to handle that situation. So, you know, there are savings that are real to keep ducts within the condition envelope, but that's not what QLoss is able to handle. So if that's your condition, then maybe you just keep it without the negative and take the full savings, like as if you were to do the flat. And I know that's not really straightforward, but it's the best we got to address that. So I think probably another good place to pause right here and see if anyone has any questions. But I'll also, right before I pause, just say, if you have any odd situations that you don't know how to fit into QLoss, call me, call Steve Spatz, call Jamie Gray. One of us will be able to help you figure out how to model it in a way that's just the minimum you need to do for building performance, or how to model it to be, you know, to really true up the savings so you can give your customers some good numbers. We're available to help you with that stuff. Now I'll pause and see if anyone has any questions.
We do have a question in the chat, Matt, around is existing CFM, so I think it was the cell further down, is that before weatherization, and target CFM after weatherization?
Yes, good clarification, Lisa. You're exactly right. That's the existing CFM 50 is as you tested before you did work, and the target CFM 50 is, you know, you could do this before you complete a project if your customer wants the savings, or if you're selling the savings with the job. But if you're just, you know, and that's why it's called target. But at the end of the day, when you submit it as a final project, target equals final. That's the test out number.
Got it.
I'll also, yeah, so I guess I'll stay paused for a minute before I jump further to see if there's more questions.
Matt, I've got one quick one. Nate Gusakov here.
Hey, Nate.
Hey there. I know I've asked you this before. In the wall calculations, you know, is there a automatic deduction for framing, etc., or is it assuming a perfect R value wall?
Yeah, good question. There is not anything built into the R values you put in these cells here.
Okay.
There is a calculator that we provide here.
That's right.
That it's advised to use. Let's jump to that. Excuse me. So here you could enter in the R value of your framing. There's a little note here, you know, wood studs about R1 per inch, steel about 0.1. So adjust that as needed. Let's say this is a 2x4 wall, right? So R4 is your framing, and there's R8 in the cavity. Exterior continuous, you have some plywood and wood siding probably, so you have to give it a little something there. It's not just 0. And the default is that 20% of the assembly is framing and 80% is insulation. So if you know there to be a whole lot more wood or a whole lot less wood, you could adjust that as you see fit. And then the way you calculate an average R value is you convert it all to U value, and then you have an assembly U value, and you can look into these formulas if you want to see how that's all done. And then you have that's converted U value back to R value. 1 over U equals R. And so that's the input into QLoss. You have to bring it back to R value. Which interestingly, back on this page, the R value is just calculated back to U value here, because that's how you calculate heat loss. But that's how it was built. So these R value calculators, there's 2 here. You can copy and paste and make as many as you want if you need more. And the idea behind this was you have an existing condition, you add something, and then you have an ending condition. But if it's not that simple, you don't have to use the additive stuff. You could just create your own post condition just as it is, without kind of trying to mess with the added stuff.
Sure.
It doesn't always work so simple that you're adding.
Got it. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Hey, welcome. And just I'll just show on a couple other tabs here, and on this tab, if you scroll down a little bit, here's just a rough calculator to estimate R value of an assembly if you have temperatures. So if you have your IR camera and you're taking surface temperatures, and you have indoor air temperatures and outside air temperatures, you can make an attempt to calculate your R value. So this again would sort of bypass the need to calculate it with framing factors and studs and stuff, and just take numbers that you'd still have to average across the temperatures you're seeing. But this gives you some ability to take the guesswork out of it. Let's see, over more tabs, there is a calculator for doing some fuel usage review. So you have a delivery date and a gallons delivered. And if you enter all of those over time, this gives you gallons per day. You start to see some things like some base load times, like they might just be using hot water between June and October. So 1.3 gallons a day is your base load. You can pull that out so that you're only putting your heating usage in the heating section. And that is important, especially when there is a lot of domestic hot water, a lot of base load usage. You do want to pull that out of your input up here. This is heating fuel usage data. So do that adjustment the best you can. If you can't do the disag stuff, or if you want support learning how to do that, please call us. We're happy to show you that in more detail. But if you don't want to bother with it, and you just want to get a rough estimate, what you could do is enter your usage, your people hot water usage, and it's going to give you this default for MMBTU, and then you can just back that out of your total heating usage or your total fuel usage to get your heating usage. So there's a couple different places, different fuel types you could, or location types, tank locations you could enter if you have multiple fuels. There's another calculator for drain water heat recovery. I know it's hard to get these into retrofits, but if you have the opportunity, here's a quick and dirty way to estimate the savings available to do a drain water heat recovery unit. And here's just one example of a product and their efficiencies. These windows, if you're modeling the window, you could get some idea as to how leaky they are, and use that to gauge how tight you can actually get by doing attic and basement if you have really leaky windows. And then you factor defaults. But really, I think most of your work is going to be, like Nate brought up, calculating your assembly R values, putting them in here, putting in your square footages for the work you're doing, and then trying to get a reasonable result and make adjustments as needed. And so for this project, we see we're at 26% of the usage. With this improvement, which is a reasonable number for a good weatherization job. If we saw this creep up above 50%, we'd want to see a pretty comprehensive job laid out in the numbers over here. Didn't really talk about shielding, which is part of your air infiltration estimates. Exposed, normal, or well shielded. And then down here you have a place to put 2 fuel types. So if you have more than 2, just use the predominant 2 and give a percent total and the efficiency of those systems. And that efficiency number does impact the savings in the end. For proposed systems, you can certainly use this to get some estimates for your client. What we'll have to do when we process the project, though, is we'd have to back these out so that we're not accounting for any system changes to the envelope changes that are part of the building performance program. Certainly good for you to use to talk to your customer about, but when it comes to what we need, we don't want to see anything in here, and we'd back it out if you did put something in there. And then health and safety measures, this is just a place to enter some that have some costs associated with them that we would pay the incentive on, because the incentive is now based on cost, and health and safety measures can be included in those costs. Then you could enter those here, and that has an impact down in this little incentive estimate where it's going to calculate out what it thinks your incentive is. So if this was $10,000, then 50% of that's $5,000. The cap is $3,000, so it's going to lay the cap down. It's also doing a check for air leakage. So if you didn't get the air leakage reduction that you need, the 10%, it's going to give you a red box, and there's no incentive there. And so once you're all done, you want to save this file, and then you come and you click upload, and you attach your invoices, and then it's in our hands to process from there. So that's the quick overview of QLoss. I'm happy to show more examples or dive into some details if anyone has any questions or some scenarios they want to review.
Hi, Matt.
Check the chat. Hi.
This is Bill. I'm curious, can you point out where heat recovery ventilation can be calculated in this model?
It can't in this model. Ventilation in general is not part of QLoss. We have talked about adding it, and we're just not there yet. Maybe we will. We do have a couple spreadsheet tools that we've used to calculate heat recovery ventilation separately from this, and I'm happy to share that. Just send me a note if you want that as part of your toolkit.
Thanks. I use manual and on an Excel spreadsheet, and it makes a lot of sense when you look at that individually.
Yeah. And if we were to add ventilation into here in general, you know, that's pretty eye-opening how much energy loss there can be from ventilation. And especially if you're adding ventilation when it wasn't there, that sort of takes away from your potential savings for good reason, health and safety. But it's good to acknowledge that. So yeah, it's something we've talked about putting in, but we don't have it yet.
Good point. I include it because I want the client to know it will cost dollars to
Yep.
run the ventilator.
Yep. That's great.
Quick second question. Are some of these cells locked so you can't mistakenly erase the formula?
Nope, you
I
can totally
You
mess with it.
You can wipe it out pretty easy, huh?
You can, which is why I suggested right from the top, save a clean copy. Anytime you start a new project, start by save as. So you're always maintaining a clean copy that's unedited. And that's just the fail safe. I think, yeah, we could get into locking cells, but that oftentimes leads to some need to unlock them down the road at some point for somebody.
Thank you. I noticed that with Bruce Cortot. He sent me a copy of QLoss for his project, and I said, wow, there's quite a lot of formula in this cell. And I realized it wasn't locked.
Yeah. It probably would be a good idea to lock up things like these outcomes. The areas, you know, you don't have to use the length times width thing here. If you know the area, if you calculated them out outside of this, you can just hard write it right in. These lengths times widths don't do anything other than calculate an area. I should mention this is net area that you want to be entering here. And so if you do have walls with windows in them, you can see the formula does remove the associated window. But if you don't use the formula and if you don't enter the windows, you do have to enter the net wall area there. Now that can be an estimate. If you say, oh, there's 10% of that wall is a window, just back out 10%. You know, we're just trying to get close here. If you wanted to be more detailed for your estimating, that's great.
I'd like to comment about a time-saving tool I started to use 2 years ago. I've got a tape rule that's an engineering scale in feet. So I work with feet and tenths of feet. And it makes my field measurements calculate up very quickly.
It's a great tip.
Hey, Matt, I had one more quick question about the R value calculator.
Sure.
Just noticed that you're inputting for a R8 wall and it's giving an assembly R value that's higher than R8. Is that because the insulation has also an exterior continuous added?
No, well, it's because of the sheathing in the siding. So, you know, this 1.4 that's continuous, it's called continuous R value, but that's continuous material.
Right, but is that being added in twice? Like it's being counted for the wood framing component? Oh no, I see. It's because it's covering everything.
Yes, it is continuous. So it's covering the R4 and it's covering the R8, giving these R values in the end. And that's 9.42 for the insulation section, which is 80% of the wall, which is why 8.2 higher than 8.
It's crazy. I just would have always expected it to modify lower when you account for framing and such. So interesting. Okay, thank you.
Well, if you didn't account for framing though, you'd be at 9.42 and not 8.2.
Right. Yep.
And then just to, you know, if you are working ever with steel buildings, you know, you can see the impact steel has on that. Oh, sorry, I did the wrong wrong change, this becomes 0.4 or less for steel.
Yep. The other thing is I appreciate the cells not being locked, and I've been able to tweak my own version mostly just for the color backgrounds and match them up. Like, all the existing boxes are one color, all the proposed boxes are another color. Anything involving savings is green, and that's been really helpful for me to tweak it a little bit.
Great. Yeah. Flexibility can help sometimes. Glad it's helping you in this regard.
Matt, we have a question from Lisa in the chat. If you could please share any other references to using QLoss, if any exist.
What we can do is we can share this training. We can share, there's another recorded training that's up on the website now. Other than that, I think the references are energy savings algorithms, so I don't know if I have this book nearby. Yeah, I don't know if you can see my screen, but residential energy for John Krieger, and this is a really accessible book and easy to follow. And in the back is a great appendix, and the appendix has the energy estimates that, or energy savings algorithms that are used in QLoss. And it also has, the ventilation savings estimates that you could build out if you really wanted to dive into learning more about the analysis. But no, there's not like a manual to it. It's pretty grassroots, I guess you might say. This tool's been around for quite a while, as long as VEIC, pretty much, which I don't know what that number is now, like 35, 40, maybe 40 years. There's a little README bit in it that is sort of a, like, almost like a buyer beware type of note. Use it at your own risk. What you enter for numbers are going to impact what the results say. So be educated in how you choose the numbers you enter. So then another reminder, save your file before you're done. Click the upload to efficiency Vermont button, and then attach the QLoss and the invoice from the job, and that will get uploaded directly to us. And please do not email this. If you're having trouble with that link for whatever reason, give us a call. We really can't send customer information across email attachments. We're not allowed. It's a security and customer confidentiality concern. And so if for some reason you do need to email it, what you could do is delete all the customer information and give us a call and tell us what that is. That would be the workaround, but try to use the upload button. It should be pretty straightforward. And unless there's no other questions, maybe Tori could jump on if you have that enrollment form. If you could.
Sure, I can either share my screen or drop it in the chat, or maybe both. This isn't something that folks will need to have on hand, as Matt mentioned earlier. We will be sending it via DocuSign to you and to the customer to sign the form. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if you're able to see that.
Yep.
Okay. So, so yeah, this is the form. It's pretty pretty basic, just a front and a back. The front of the page is will be filled out by the customer, so it's the customer information. We will actually already have received this based on what you had submitted in the QLoss tool. So either the customer can fill it out, or maybe we'll pre-populate and they'll just need to verify and sign. And then this is the section where they let us know how to direct their rebate check. So the back of the form, this table should look pretty familiar to folks. It's the same, building performance table with the minimum air sealing and insulation requirements. So the main difference here is that we have this column for costs. So you will have entered the costs for these measures in QLoss. And so we will just kind of add them to this form so that the customer can understand the eligible costs that they are for the rebate, and then what their final rebate amount is. So this is a way to communicate back to the customer, this is your final rebate amount. And here's the section where you, the contractor, will sign. So that's it. Pretty basic front and back. So I've dropped it in the chat as well for reference. And yeah, so like Matt said, this will be sent via DocuSign, so another secure document sharing tool. So keep an eye out for that on projects that you will be completing.
Tori, I have a quick question on that.
Sure.
Notice where the contractor signs off on it, it referenced home performance with Energy Star instead of building performance. That's just a typo, or I imagine. Right, they're two separate things.
Yep. I think good catch. We had just this is the same statement as the home performance language. So yeah, great call. We will update that just for clarification.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
So Junio just mentioned the link was not allowed. The enrollment form link did not work for him. So I can do that again. Oh.
I can also
maybe you can change the permissions, Tori.
Sure. Yeah, I think I had just let me see if rather than sharing a link, I'm trying to just drop the file into the chat.
Yeah, I just added a link myself. I think that should work.
Great, it worked.
Excellent.
Thanks, Matt.
Sure. Yeah, so that's our hour time slot. Happy to stay around a little longer and answer more questions or talk about home performance or building performance. If anyone has any topics they want to bring up. But if we're all set, then we can call it a morning. Give it a few minutes in case someone wants to jump in.
Hi, Matt. I have a quick question.
Yeah, Bill.
I have a building contractor who's in the process of installing his air to water heat pump. Will his incentives change on January 1st, or are they the same as in 2020?
So the way that the customer, so the rebate for air to water is staying the same.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. It's the air to air units, the ducted units, that's changing, and there's some timelines around purchase and then install that you have to meet.
I've read up on those and I feel confident. I was unaware of the air to water, so thank you.
Yep.
Great presentation today. I love this tool. Thank you.
Great. Look forward to seeing those projects roll in, Bill.
Yep, one old man.
I didn't say it.
Yep, well, it's the truth. Have a great day. Thank you.
All right, you too. All right, folks. Well, if there's no other questions, I'll close the meeting. Well, something came up in the chat. Just have a good day. All right, have a good day. I'll close the meeting. If anyone has any questions later on, feel free to email or call me or call Steve or Jamie. We're happy to help you through it. So thanks for attending. We'll post the recording and get that out to you as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks,
My
Matt.
pleasure. Yeah, you're welcome. Hey, Brent, I don't know if I see you finally got on. Did you